If men are from Mars and women are from Venus, then in an Asperger marriage, men are from the Andromeda Galaxy and women are from the Horsehead Nebula. Actually, the difference is probably even greater than that. Hi, I'm Steve.
And I'm Lib. And together, we're Lib and Steve. Today will be part one of exploring the vast differences of perspectives in neurodiverse relationships. And next week, we'll attempt to untangle and bring clarity to these often divergent viewpoints.
As Lib and I discussed this theme, we recognized there were many examples we could have chosen, but we settled on the following. Many years ago, we were in a season of hosting a little home fellowship every Sunday. I was recognized as the leader of our little group. As spring turned to summer, we anticipated going as a group to a cabin on a lake. Discussions were had and planning commenced. An expectation began to build. I had no capacity back then to flex for anyone else's ideas, being mind blind. I thought everyone with the same set of facts would draw the exact same conclusions. Since I had access to most facts, I would do the planning.
One of the women in our group loved to use her gift of hospitality, and she had input for how the sleeping arrangements could work out. But she was encountered with rigidity on Steve's part, and I was, of course, horrified. I was stuck in the middle, trying to translate back and forth to my friend and to my rigid husband. The end result was that she ended up backing out of going on the trip, feeling slighted, I'm sure.
At the time, that was certainly not the way that I perceived it. I was the leader, and as such, it was my responsibility to plan, organize, communicate, and make sure everybody got where they were supposed to be, in their places. Again, I assumed that each person would make the same decisions I was making, giving the facts. So I felt frustrated that my leadership was being usurped. I was then asking for team contribution, and quite frankly, there was a concept that never entered my mind. I simply had no idea that two people could look at the same set of facts and draw totally different conclusions. I now know this happens all the time.
And this is why we didn't have any friends. If any of you have seen the humorous Pink Panther series with Peter Sellers, where he eventually drove his boss insane, reducing him to a stuttering, twitching eyeball, maybe some of you are relating to our story and you're feeling like that twitching eyeball. It is so challenging to consider that these completely different perspectives could go on in a neurodiverse marriage, where one sees it clearly and the other simply has no idea or no capacity to view it any other way.
Now for a story that is current, PostHealing. In fact, it happened just last night. This story will encourage you that healing is real and patterns can really be reversed. Lib and I had planned a nice, relaxing evening by taking in a live concert at a park by a lake. But both Lib and I had stress-filled, jam-packed days. Lib was running errands when I got home from work, so I went right into exercising. I knew the timing would be tight, but I thought I could get it all in before we left for the concert.
I could share a dozen stress-packed scenes from my day yesterday, but the following scene was the icing on the cake. As I was returning home from my errands yesterday, I was entering the freeway on-ramp, and a very angry man in a hot rod Mustang that just so happened to look identical to our son's car, who is currently estranged from us. He got all hot and bothered at me as I appropriately turned on my signal to move over into his lane, just as he decided to put the pedal to the metal and began racing past me. He was so angry at me for foiling his plan, and I could see his silhouette angrily shouting and using finger language at me. I mean, he was a hot mess. But because his car looked exactly like my son's, it impacted me very dramatically. I had to really go through some inner healing processes as I continued driving home. So when I got home, I wanted to briefly process this toxic event with Steve. I was exhausted and emotionally fried.
I was locked into my timeline in order to get out the door and to the concert on time. Typically when I exercise, I put in earbuds and listen to podcasts. I was startled out of my reality when Lib came down and stood next to me, desiring to share a bit of her burden. My thought was, honey, we have a 25-minute trip to the concert. I'll get all the details then. We'll be late if I listen now. What followed after that was a spiraling series of missed cues as to what she really needed. Just a moment of listening and empathizing.
As I said, I was exhausted physically and emotionally, so the missed cues were beginning to add to my list of the day's challenges. I was feeling quite sad, and I realized that I really didn't even want to go to the concert with the way things were transpiring.
Within the first 50 feet down the road, I began to wake up and realize that this night was going to be a lot different than what I thought. Rather than going to the concert, we would find a space to truly hear Lib's heart. That is something that was never possible before healing. I suggested that we go to a nice park that we were about to go past. Granted, it took a lot longer coming to this conclusion than it should have. Years ago, the plan would have been about going to the concert, and that checklist item is all I would have been able to accomplish.
So we detoured to the park that we were passing, and I began to unload my heavy heart, and the night was salvaged. The point of this current story is to give hope that healing and pattern reversal is possible. But I remember oh so well in the thick of Cassandra days that it is really, really hard to have hope when you are painfully in the midst of your partner's mind blindness. So Steve, lay out the reality of how this all plays out.
Cassandra's want to be vindicated, and an Aspie, especially undiagnosed, is in this swirl of confusion, wondering what the heck is wrong with everyone when the conclusion is so obvious. Some Aspies might feel they are under attack for ruining the family when they are simply doing the best they could. And Cassandra is emotionally shredded and wants the abuse acknowledged. The Aspie largely has no idea they are being inappropriate.
It's such a challenge, but be encouraged. Steve is healed, and his brain is growing new neural pathways to learn new patterns all the time. Before healing, we would have ended up at the concert, not talking, Steve totally clueless as to why no words were spoken, and another huge gaping hole in my heart. Last night was different. Steve caught this. I didn't have to spell it out for him. We got to spend time processing my very challenging day.
If you are currently with a partner who is undiagnosed or stuck with no progress, suggest books that tell stories of other Asperger marriages. It wasn't until I began reading books about other Asperger men and their marriages that I was able to see and begin to intellectually process what was going on in my marriage without the entanglement of Lib's emotions. I wasn't the bad guy when reading someone else's story. In the description, we list some helpful books.
Next time, we will answer the question, does a husband with Asperger's understand that he is being emotionally abusive? I hope you can join us. And let us know if you have any questions. And remember, hope is on the way.
Please like us, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this with anyone who could benefit.